This reabsorption comes from ATP, which turns on the sodium-potassium ATPase pumping units, which are the little enzymes that pump all of the sodium out of the cell and put potassium in the cell, and then allow the filtered fluid to go into the cell because there's no sodium in the cell. So sodium that is filtered at 145 milliequivalents, some high number, will then enter the cell going down this favorable concentration gradient that is maintained by energy consumption. So the energy of the kidney, its energy consumption, is 100% related to the reclamation of filtered sodium. And it tacks on all these other interesting things, hanging on to amino acids, hanging on to glucose, making erythropoietin. We are wearing out our kidneys. We present these cells with too much work. They scar up, they turn to rocks, and they die. So if we are to intervene in this process, we have to articulate a national policy to lighten the kidney's burden, lighten renal work, make it easier on the kidneys so we aren't killing them at our current rate. This is a kidney as visualized by Vesalius in 1543. Prior to this, all pundits imagined that the urine was made in the bladder. Leonardo da Vinci knew that the kidneys were involved, but thought they were just attractive and were there for symmetry. And basically, the bladder made the urine. Vesalius was the first one to imagine that blood went into the kidney with a filtering process of some kind, and urine came out. And that's basically the right idea. What he didn't realize is that there were 100 or 1 million of these units in each kidney. And they do a lot of filtering, which is completely passive, takes no energy, requires no work, generates no entropy, does not scar. Reclaiming the filtrate is what uses up the energy and wears out the kidney. So in an effort to head off this economic catastrophe, the industry has identified certain things that we link to ruining kidneys. High blood pressure, diabetes, proteinuria. I've lifted obesity off the list and replaced it with overeating. Obesity doesn't hurt anybody. Obesity is what happens when you eat more than you burn and you have to put it somewhere. See, obesity is not the disease. The overeating is the disease. Hyperlipidemia, toxins, and on the bottom in a different color, which implies perhaps a different source, is fewer nephrons. We'll take a quick look at that first. If you chop out part of the kidney, the rest of the kidney has to work harder and it will wear out. If you're born with one kidney, that kidney works harder, and if you're not careful, it will wear out. If you take animals and remove 60 to 70% of their kidneys, the remaining kidney, the remnant kidney, will wear out in weeks to months. Here's the bad news. If you donate one of your kidneys to a loved one or in a fit of philanthropic zeal to a total stranger, you may wear out your kidneys. Initially, we told people you only need one. Give it up and save someone's life. So we followed those people, and a few of them, the creatinines inch up. A few have required renal replacement therapy. They wore out the remaining kidney. The positive side, you go directly to the top of the list for a transplant yourself if you give someone a kidney. There are strategies which we would put into place when somebody donates a kidney. We would say, control your blood pressure. We'd say, don't get diabetes. We might even refuse to take a kidney from somebody who has high blood pressure or diabetes, or even a family history of diabetes. We will tell that person not to eat a lot of protein. Do not go on an Argentine or Nicaraguan diet. They eat about 2 cows a day per capita. Why does overeating protein kill kidneys? Well, if you double your protein intake, you double your renal blood flow, you double your glomerular filtration, and you double the work of reclaiming what you filtered. So there are a couple places where eating too much protein becomes a big problem. The Atkins diet comes to mind. I advise everybody to be on it for no more than a month and start checking urinary protein if you want to keep on it for longer than that. I advise my colleagues in the surgical ICU to be moderate when they start writing hyperalimentation orders to force feed people into healing. There's a balance. The body can handle a certain amount. If you overdo it, all you do is cause trouble. There's also a sense that if you're born with too few nephrons are the functional units again, 1 million in each kidney. If you don't have enough, the ones you do have will have to work harder. And this is part of the theory behind the sense that prematures who are born with fewer nephron numbers have a higher incidence of renal failure as they age. Perhaps the reason why some races have a higher incidence of protein leak and renal failure. We all filter a few grams of protein every day. We imagine that the filtering barrier is completely impermeable to protein, but we filter normally between 5 and 10 grams of protein a day. And the proximal tubules reabsorb all of that. They do it by a process of endocytosis, which is work-intensive, energy-intensive, and if the kidney has to do too much of that, the kidney will wear out and scar up. So when that filtering surface becomes more permeable, when the molecules in the filter become sugared with protein due to long-standing diabetes, and the protein leak overwhelms the ability of the proximal tubules to reabsorb it, protein shows up in the urine, and at that point is a powerful marker for incipient renal failure. So we target proteinuria. If we measure protein in the urine, we get all over it. We use drugs to try to slow the filtering process. We found out that the main drug we used not only slowed down the protein leak, but greatly blunted the scarring process. It became a very useful tool in our war against renal failure. Our war against renal failure, at least coming from the diabetic, which is our scariest player. The United States is quickly becoming a diabetic nation. And diabetes is a bad disease. You wear out every organ in your body. Most people will have a heart attack or a stroke before they kill their kidneys, but those that do survive the heart attacks and the strokes or outwit them in some way represent the big threat to the funding for the end-stage renal disease program. We're imagining that this great increase in the number of people who will require dialysis will come from the diabetic population. As the diabetic baby boomers age, and that's about 7 years from now, and they hit the current capacity for providing end-stage renal disease support, they will cripple our healthcare system. High blood pressure wears it out, so you can buy from your pharmacy any number of expensive blood pressure lowerers. That's how we do it in America. We have a problem, we have a pill or an operation. We don't approach the cause of the issue. If you look at salt consumption and hypertension across the world, the places that eat the most salt have the most hypertension. The places that eat the least salt have the least hypertension. If you look at Taiwan, they eat 35 grams of salt a day, have an astronomical incidence of high blood pressure, stroke, and kidney failure. If you look at the New Guinea highlands, far from the sea, where they eat 10 milliequivalents of sodium a day, blood pressure elevation is unheard of. And people there are more apt to be eaten by their neighbors before they die of a heart attack or kidney failure. You can treat almost any blood pressure situation by lowering the salt intake. How much salt do we eat in America? Way too much. 13 to 15 grams. I was once addressing a group of nurses saying that there's no such thing as a low-salt restaurant. And a nurse in back put up her hand and said, there's one in Detroit. But think about it, you know. You're a restaurant, you want to make money, you want people to think the food is okay, you lace it with salt. Craig Claiborne, the food editor for the New York Times, his job was eating four-star restaurants and writing on it to a devoted public. He ran afoul of many of the downstream consequences of too much salt, had a heart attack, and was told by his physician to stop eating salt. He went nuts. But said that after about 3 months of a low-salt diet, he actually got over the craving. The salt-sensitive papilla in the back of the tongue finally loosened their death hold on him. And he was able to distinguish far more critically among various herbs and tastes and flavors, and wrote a book, a low-salt cookbook, that is always out of print. You can never find it. But convinced the food industry to do that. Salt's part of our food mainstream. It's a great preservative. We've become used to its taste. All fast food food preparations are rich in salt. All prepared foods, all canned foods. If you are going to go on a low-salt diet, you cannot eat out. You cannot go to the store. You have to cook whole foods for yourself. And it's un-American to make that kind of adjustment. So we take pills instead. Hyperlipidemia, the bad fats, and we'll come back to the bad fats because they play a big role in the next part of my remarks. Bad fats, if they get too high, will totally adversely affect membrane remodeling, the ability to heal membranes and create new membranes. In a high-fat environment, the membranes aren't made normally. There's too much cholesterol in it. We get atherosclerosis. We ruin those blood vessels. Those are the blood vessels that go to the brain, strokes, go to the heart, heart attacks, go to the eye, blindness, go to the kidney, renal failure. So rather than eat right, we're offered medications that will lower the lipids. The kind of diet we eat is grain-rich rather than leaf-rich. Makes a lot of sense. Grains transport better. They're easier to store. They have far more calories. The seed, because it may be lofted on winds or in waters, has to bring its own fuel supply with it in order to survive the trip. So seeds are rich in fats and calories. We eat far more grains now and far fewer leaves. We're taking the simple, rich, and easily preserved part rather than the delicate and quite differently nutritive part. If you look at omega-3 oils, these are the current darlings of the nutritionism literature. If you look at leaves, they're rich in omega-3. If you look at grains, seeds, they're rich in omega-6. The balance between the two determines what sort of membrane protection you get. You need way more omega-3 than omega-6. Our food industry addresses that by giving us omega-3 supplements to take to restore the balance. But we don't know how much you need because we don't know how much of the omega-6 we're eating in the grains. Toxins, yeah, we're not talking the atom bomb, and we're not talking dioxin. We're talking drugs. Antibiotics kill kidneys. If you look at acute